everybody. We're back with week 3 here in Missoula Land, America. The new party is presenting this week its work on the living wage. We're postponing until next week the year 2000 edition we were going to do, so really stay tuned to that. On my right we have Virginia Sanderson. Then I'm Rick Gold, by the way. And on my left I have Paula Hoffman and Philomena Ryan to the far left. So Virginia's going to start us off tonight with her talk on the living wage issue.
Well, I kind of found something interesting in the local Missoula paper a little while ago, and it's a quote by one of our district managers of a local fast food company, and it seems like nobody wants to work for minimum wage. Can you believe it? I mean, how could we figure that one out? Nobody wants to work for minimum wage. Our coalition is not about minimum wage. It's about a living wage. It's about living here in Missoula, Montana, and how we in this city need to have people who pay us a living wage. Not only here in Missoula, but in the entire state of Montana. But I'm going to read to you here from some papers that I have about the problems. We all know what the problems are. That's why we're here today. You don't really need to hear this a lot because you know it already. But we're going to go over it all. Montana workers face the lowest wages in the nation. We have been pursuing economic development policies to bring new businesses to Montana. And our state government has given out more than $150 million in tax breaks, low-interest loans, and grants during 1996. Unfortunately for us, Montanan workers, these programs have few strings attached to the money that is given to these corporations. In other words, they don't have to show us anything in return for these corporate tax breaks. And many of these recipient companies that we're giving tax breaks to are not paying anything but minimum wage, and we can't live here in Montana on minimum wages. They also don't like the fact that we unionize. So we've started a Montana Living Wage Coalition, and we're going to give you the names already of some of the people that belong to our coalition. The solution is that we need a living wage legislation here in the city, countywide, statewide, that is going to require businesses that do receive corporate welfare to give us back something in return. And we want living wage jobs, we want health care benefits, and we want people and corporations to respect our rights to organize a union for better conditions, for better jobs. Remember, folks, this is not a minimum wage thing we're after here. We're after living wages.
Which is $5.25 an hour in Missoula.
Yeah. More Montana workers, we all know this, work 2 or more jobs than in any other state in our union. Montana is the poorest state north of the Mason-Dixon line. I think that's even been updated. I think we're the poorest. 1 out of every 5 of our children living here in this state are in poverty. We lead the nation in poverty growth. Okay. I have one of our city council people here in Missoula, Jim McGrath, has been on the pushing edge of getting us help to get through this city council and working on this policy. Basically, he says, any enterprise the city blesses in whatever way should be held accountable to their role in the economy. This is Jim McGrath, Missoula City Council, as quoted from the Missoula Independent November 19th of this year. Just recently, the Independent, Ken Picard, wrote a good article, "The Fight is On for Local Living Wage." And I wanted to talk about, just quote him here as he says, "As anyone who has spent a few depressing afternoons at the Missoula Job Service knows, ours is a predominantly service-driven economy with wages comparable to those found in a Mexican border town minus the allure of the cheap tequila." So I'm going to turn this over now to Richard, who's going to tell us a little bit about Montana People's Action and also tell us a little bit about the legislative program, also other than living wages, that we're working on.
Thank you, Virginia. Rick Gold again, and what I'm going to do is talk about Montana People's Action 1999 legislative platform. Montana People's Action members from across the state attended MPA's October 1998 legislative summit to determine the issue priorities of Montana People's Action. The 5 positions below represent the priorities of Montana People's Action for the 1999 session. The first is living wages. Businesses that receive public subsidies in the form of tax breaks, loans, and grants should pay living wages and provide health benefits to their employees. Public subsidies can be powerful tools to create good jobs, but not if we allow recipient businesses to keep people poor by paying poverty wages. Stop welfare sanctions. Montana's new welfare system punishes parents for noncompliance by sanctioning them, which results in a near total loss of income for up to 6 months. Often welfare recipients are sanctioned for missing an appointment even after establishing good cause or for mailing a document to the wrong address. MPA wants a responsible sanction policy that protects parents and their children from unnecessary economic crisis. The Housing Trust Fund. Housing costs take the biggest bite out of MPA's member budgets, sometimes eating up to more than 60% of monthly income. Establishing a state housing trust fund will provide funds to develop affordable housing units for Montana families. And as we build more affordable housing, we'll also be creating good living wage jobs. Children's health care. Montana People's Action supports full funding of new Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP for short, a program that will cover about 1/2 of Montana's uninsured children. To ensure the program benefits children and not big insurance companies, MPA supports the creation of a consumer advisory board to monitor the implementation of the Children's Health Care Insurance Program. And stop the fees. Montana People's Action will fight to revoke the new child support fees placed on children's support orders by the Child Support Enforcement Division.
Let's look at that camera.
This new fee can take hundreds of dollars out of children's pocket every year and risk pushing families into poverty and breaking them up. The statewide or the local contact for the Montana People's Action is 728-5297. That's their local number, and a statewide number for them, which is toll-free, is 888-290-5711. You can also contact them on the internet at www.mtpaction.org. So some of the different Living Wage Coalition members, we'll start with Montana People's Action. Montana People's Action is a grassroots statewide citizen action grassroots organization. They tackle the social and economic issues identified by their low and moderate income members. Montana People's Action has active local membership chapters in Billings, Bozeman, Missoula, and has members and donors across the state. They're at,
That's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Missoula New Party, who I'm a member of. They're a progressive political action organization that works to elect progressive politicians.
Richard's talking about the people who have joined the coalition now
Yeah,
for
as
the
of-
living wage.
As of
and
10/28/98.
as of October, right.
The Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees Union here, they are a local union in Missoula. The
Go ahead.
Missoula Indian Center Service Organization for Native Americans, the Montana Community Labor Alliance, a coalition of unions and community groups working together for economic equity for all. The Carpenters Union, that's self-explanatory, and they're here. Missoula Business and Professional Women, their mission is to achieve equity for all women in the workplace through advocacy, education, and information. Women's Opportunity and Resource Development, or WORD for short. They're a nonprofit organization that empowers women and families by providing basic services and training. It's a pretty impressive coalition. The Montana Federation of Teachers, they're a union for the teachers. Women's Voices for the Earth, feminist environmental group. Advocates for Social Justice, they're self-explanatory. The Missoula, Montana Association of Churches, they're Christian Advocate Network. Missoula County Democrats, they're politicians. Jeanette Rankin Peace Center, they're a peace center. Free Bikes of Missoula, they're Free Bicycle Center. League of Women Voters, they're a nonpartisan group that works on election issues. Montana Association of Senior Citizens. So as you can see, this is quite a large living wage coalition. A lot of different people participating, a lot of different groups. Now we're going to turn to Philomena Ryan, who's going to give us another angle on the living wage coalition.
Thank you. And this angle is a study that's just been completed in January of this year. Northwest Job Gap Study, and on a little bit of a larger area. The study is in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. And the Northwest Job Gap Study is searching for work that pays. And Montana, and it's a Northwest Policy Center and Northwest Federation of Community Organizations. And about the Northwest Job Gap Study, it's it's not taken out of our tax-paying dollars. This is just a coalition of different groups. The Northwest Job Gap Study is a joint project of the Northwest Policy Center at the University of Washington Graduate School of Public Affairs and the Northwest Federation of Community Organizations. And the Northwest Policy Center is an applied policy research center that works with policymakers and practitioners to improve strategies for vital Northwest economy, with an emphasis on the health and well-being of the region's people, communities, and environment. Okay. And the Northwest Federation of Community Organizations is a regional federation of 4 statewide community-based social and economic justice organizations. Montana's People Action, Idaho Citizens Network, Oregon Action, and Washington Citizen Action. And these organizations represent a broad-based grassroots constituency, including disenfranchised and low to moderate income residents. They engage in community organizing and coalition building and conduct issue campaigns at the state and community level. Guiding the Northwest Job Gap Study and its research and analysis and education and outreach efforts are state steering committees made up of representatives of business, labor, government, and community groups. Funding for the Northwest Job Gap Study is provided in part by a grant from the Northwest Area Foundation. And we have, for more information, contact Northwest Federation of Community Organizations. Their telephone number is 206-382-208 2, and they are located at 100 South King Street, number 240 in Seattle, Washington. And Northwest Policy Center is University of Washington, Box 353060, Seattle, Washington, 98195-3060. And their telephone number is 206-543-7900. And searching for work that pays. Northwest Job Gap Study, Montana. Purpose of the study explores the gap between the number of living wage jobs being created in the Northwest and the number of people needing living wage jobs. It also seeks to raise awareness and promote public dialogue about the job and job gap and policy options to address it. And let's see, covers the states of, once again, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington, and aims to provide answers to questions. What is a living wage? What are we creating? Are we creating enough jobs that pay a living wage? And which occupations and industries provide living wage job opportunities for people needing them? And how can we promote living wage jobs and make sure people needing these jobs are able to get them? And this report examines the first two of these questions. Key findings. The key findings in Montana based on 1996 data are the living wage for a single adult is $9.02 an hour. This is based on what is needed to meet basic needs and provides some ability to plan ahead. The living wage for a single adult with 2 children is about $14.80 an hour. And about half of all job openings, 53%, pay less than $9.02 an hour, living wage for a single adult. And over 3/4, 81%, pay less than $14.80 an hour, living wage for a single adult with 2 children. And for each job opening that pays at least the $9.02 an hour living wage for a single adult, there are about 6 job seekers on an average. For each,
That's important.
it surely is.
Yeah, you know, go ahead and
Okay.
elaborate a little bit on that. You want to repeat that again?
I surely shall.
Each job.
For each job opening that pays at least $9.02 an hour, that's living wage for a single adult,
Right.
there are 6 job seekers on an average. For each job opening that pays at least $14.80 an hour, living wage for a single adult with 2 children, there are 17 job seekers on average. Okay, and let's see. What is a living wage?
What is the living wage?
Okay.
Come on, tell us.
Okay, a living wage is a wage that allows families to meet their basic needs without resorting to public assistance and provides them some ability to deal with emergencies and plan ahead. And living wages are calculated on the basis of family budgets for several household types, as shown. We have a table below. Family budgets include basic necessities such as food, housing and utilities, transportation, health care, child care, and household clothing, personal items, state, local, and federal taxes and savings. And for living wages for Montana are, for single adult household is $18,760 a year, or $9.02 an hour. For a single adult with 1 child, $24,351 a year, or $11.71 an hour. For a single adult with 2 children, $30,784 a year at $14.80 an hour. For 2 adults, one of whom is working, with 2 children, $25,559 a year, or $12.29 an hour. For 2 adults, both of whom are working, with 2 children, $34,491 a year, or $16.58 an hour, which means that the combined wages of both working adults needs to total that amount. Okay, and these are statewide averages. In some areas, costs are higher, particularly for housing and childcare, and as a result, living wages are higher. In other areas, including most of the state's rural areas, costs and therefore living wages are lower. Living wages for higher cost and lower cost areas are, single adults, that's $9.10 an hour. For lower cost areas, $8.91 an hour. And single adult with 1 child, $11.88 an hour, $11.44 an hour for lower cost areas. Single adult with 2 children, $14.94 an hour, $14.64 an hour for lower cost areas. Once again, 2 adults with one who works is $12.47 an hour, and $12 an hour for lower cost areas. 2 adults, both of whom work with 2 children, $16.72 an hour, and $16.49 an hour for lower cost areas.
Wow.
And you know, that one figure where they say 2 adults, a single adult with 2 children, that figure was for one child who was in school full-time and 1 preschooler. So the figure would be higher if you had 2 preschoolers.
Right, or 2 teenagers even.
Right.
That's for sure.
And on this next page is the page that I find which validates this whole study, where it tells, you know, how much money people spend on food, how much they spend on rent.
And these are things we know about. We live here.
Right, and
Right.
when we read these things,
It's not something that we need to tell the people that our viewership is and how much we spend, how much we know goes out of our pocket every day.
Right.
The big thing here also is that we need people to realize that we're not trying to get everyone in the state of Montana who hires somebody to come up with this living wage. What we want is that this business development, these tax incentives, anything that our government is deciding to entice our businesses coming into us, if they're going to grant them some sort of an incentive, we want them to be held accountable.
Right.
so what you're saying
For-
is, if they get corporate welfare, we shouldn't have to pay the workers welfare too.
That's
right.
correct.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe at this point we should segue into Paula. And let Paula
Yes,
Hoffman.
Paula is working on the local level here in the city of
Yes.
Missoula, and she's going to tell us all about what we can do as Missoulians to help ourselves get in touch with our city councilors who are going to be looking at this issue really quickly here. So Paula's going to tell us all
And
about
we'll
that.
have their numbers up on the
The
screen
screen.
for you too, so you can give yours a call.
Yeah, okay. What I'd like to start with is to say that I am a BPW, or Business and Professional Women's member, so that's my capacity here. And BPW was one of the first organizations to sign on to this coalition. And that was
she
this,
knits also.
and I do what?
Knit.
Oh, yeah, okay. We have fun with that. In October of '97, the City Council set forth in its strategic directions for 1998 that we keep Missoula affordable. And so as a result of that, the City Council comprised an economic development subcommittee, which has been working really hard on developing a report which has passed that subcommittee and is now in administration and finance committee. And just to tell you that the first 2 pieces of this thing have been passed. One is the resolution defining the role of the city in local economic development, and the other is the resolution of economic development goals. And I won't get into that because we really want to stress what's going on this next month. And that's the resolution defining economic citizenship. And I'm going to just read a short portion of this to you because I want to be sure and get it right. And then I want to tell you why we're on here tonight specifically and why we want you to talk to your city council representatives. Now therefore it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Missoula that whenever the city enters a direct relationship with a business, the business should agree to be defined as a good economic citizen. The city considers a good economic citizen to be one who fosters and performs the following: that they should commit to an effort of poverty reduction, a vital goal of the city sponsorship should be to reduce poverty. That companies should be accountable to us as citizens for the monies that they get from us for those tax benefits. That, you know, they shouldn't just take it and then never come back to us and tell us how they've done with their businesses. That they should comply with the Fair Labor Relations Acts that are federal in nature, actually. And that they should be willing to sign neutrality agreements if their workers want to organize as a union. And last but most important, living wage. Employers must pay their people a living wage, enough for family self-sufficiency in Missoula. Yeah. And this gets back down to what I was saying. If we're going to give corporate people, corporations money, and they are defined as people by law, welfare, if we're going to give them tax incentives, then we don't want to also have to give their workers tax incentives, or not tax incentives, but welfare. We don't want to do food stamps. We don't want to do rent subsidies. We don't want to do any of that stuff.
Nor do the people who are working those jobs want to take these.
And it's demeaning.
Absolutely.
It is demeaning. It's wonderful to work, but, you know, not too long ago, I remember when a man could support a family of several children, and now it takes 2 workers.
Yeah. And let's not forget that there are more people in the city of Missoula working 2 jobs.
That's right.
Than any other place in Montana. Now, we all know this. We're just reiterating.
Right. And
So,
maybe what a good idea would be is to say how overall these relate to the individual who would, you know, be interested in how they could, you know, bring these issues to their city council people.
So anyway, the thing is that the Administration and Finance Committee, which is going to consider this last piece of the economic development report, some council members want to cut the living wage piece. And that's the whole meat of it.
Yeah.
That's practically the whole reason any of this was developed. And so on Wednesday, February the 20th, so you need to call your city council person, or if you don't, even if you know another city council person, you might want to call them. Before February 20th, that's Wednesday, in a couple of weeks, they're going to have a meeting. The Administration and Finance Committee is going to have a meeting at 3 p.m. in the City Council chambers, which is on Ryman and Spruce. And if you can attend, that would be great. If you can't attend, please come to the City Council chambers on February the 20th, Wednesday at 3 p.m. And now, if we could, I will show the city councilors list. And you want to read that?
Right.
Yeah.
We also have something visual to put up on the screen.
Yes.
Paula, you show out there as I show what Ward 1 is for your Missoula City Councilors. There are 2 people in each ward, and we have 6 wards. And so, Paula, what's the definition line there of Ward 1?
Basically, Ward 1 is the rattlesnake, the upper and lower rattlesnake, and a piece of downtown that is bordered by the railway in McCormick Park, South 3rd West, the river, and that little piece of housing that is just north of the river that runs along Highway 200.
And the Ward 1 Missoula City Councilors are Lois Herbig at 549-5833 and Dave Harmon at 542-1625. Call your city council people, no matter which way you feel about this issue, please.
Yes, that's right. And if you have some questions about what the issues are, don't forget you can call MPA at 728-5297 here in Missoula also. So.
Okay. Now Ward 2 is?
Ward 2
back to the map.
is Grant Creek, and basically west of downtown. Oh, there's a little
north side.
So it's the part of the north side, and also part of this area that was recently annexed.
It's called the west side, I think.
Okay.
Right.
North side and west side. So Ward 2 now is on both sides of the river, and its southernmost boundary is, again, South 3rd West.
South 3rd West. Okay, and your ward members there are, or your ward councilors there are Jim McGrath at 549-1543 and Jamie Carpenter at 542-2237. Okay, and Ward 3?
Ward 3 is basically the northern half of the university area, so it's south of the river and is bounded on the south by North Avenue, and it is also bounded a little bit by Stevens on the west side.
Okay.
So it's a little jiggy-jaggy kind of thing here.
And Ward 3 city councilors are Chris Gingerelli, did I say that correctly? Gingerelli at 721-9967, and Lou Ann Crowley at 721-4331. These numbers are really good for you guys to take down in any case, no matter what issue you would like the city to look into for you.
They're your city councilors.
They're your city council
You
people.
elected them.
You elected them, yes, is correct. Okay, and Ward 4?
Ward 4, its northernmost boundary is North Avenue. It runs all the way up the hill, and its most western boundary is basically Russell, and it goes all the way up Mount Sentinel, or that
Right.
second hill of Mount Sentinel. So it's the southeast corner of Missoula.
Okay. And Ward 4 city councilors are Larry Anderson at 721-6323 and Mert Charney at 251-6377. Ward 5.
Ward 5 is the southwestern portion of city of Missoula, so it's bounded on the east by Russell, and it's bounded on the west by partially Reserve Street. It's kind of jiggy-jaggies around Southgate Mall,
South Hills is.
and it goes up the South Hills.
Right.
Okay, now some of that South Hills is county only, that Upper Miller Creek
Right.
area.
But you'll know whether you're city or
But
county, that's
you
for
should
sure.
know whether you're city or county.
Okay. Ward
Look on your
5
tax bill.
city councilors are Scott Morgan at 542-3658. And I personally had a chance to talk to Scott Morgan not too long ago. He has told me that no one has mentioned or talked to him about this issue from his ward. So Ward 5, please let Scott Morgan know in any way, shape, or form which way you feel. Jack Reedy is also in your ward at 251-4684. Ward 6 is our last one.
And not to be least, it is bounded on the north by South 3rd West, and on the east by Stevens and Brooks, and on the west by Reserve. It goes a little bit beyond Reserve.
Okay, and the Ward 6 city councilors are Andy Sponsiller at 549-8703 and Tracy Turek at 543-8850.
At least we forget Mike Cadis is the mayor, and he lives in Ward 1, but anyone can actually call him also.
Right. Jim McGrath has been a big sponsor of the economic development city council proposal.
Okay, to sum it all up for everybody, how do we create a living wage ordinance for Missoula? Call your city councilors and your mayor. Call them and tell them how you feel. What we're going to show you is some footage that was shot at a public hearing of the Missoula City Council Economic Development Subcommittee on October 28, 1998, and specifically this is dealing with the living wage.
Number 10, charge this subcommittee with the task of fleshing out recommendations 3, 4, 5, and 6, and to follow up with the living wage. These are recommendations that call for more research or discussion. And I apologize, by the way, for those of you who do have a copy of the report and recommendations, we have some spare ones there. There are a number of typographical errors in this particular version. Bear with us, this is a draft in any case. There's quite a number of you here tonight, and I'm pleased to see all of you here. However, as you can obviously guess, if all of you spoke for as long as you wanted, we'd be here forever. So I'm going to ask two things. One is I'm going to ask that those of you who are have similar messages not to say the same thing over and over again, but to try and confine your remarks to new comments, and we can take some general straw polls or what have you to get a sense of if some of you know that there's a group of you wanting to say, yes, we support this or that. And we can get a sense in this, as the committee, of how many of you feel that way. And then the others, in general, I'm going to ask you to keep your remarks short. Generally, we think of a 3-minute time limit. I'm not very experienced at doing a 3-minute time period, so I'll probably let you slip, but keep in mind that there are a number of you folks here that want to testify, and so be courteous and keep your remarks short. And finally, for the sake of the staff who will be writing up minutes of this, when you speak, please say your name, spell it if it's an unusual name, before you begin your remarks. I don't have any particular, we don't have like a podium, and so it's kind of hard for you guys to line up.
Start right around here and then go row by row. Is anybody in
So,
Why do you do it?
what am I doing?
why don't you go first, guys? Most of you go.
Just go, I'd like, instead of just having to do it that way, have you any suggestions?
I just want to know, who's here to talk about the living wage?
I'm gonna kind of jump ahead here. I have a sick friend I need to get to. I'm Colleen Barclay, Vice President of Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union, Local 427. I want to thank the committee for your work on this issue. The issue of economic development is one as we, as union people, think about all the time. We support the recommendations contained in this report and are grateful that you've recognized the role that unions play in good economic development. We applaud the committee for recognizing that the city itself must be a model of good economic citizenship, and that such citizenship includes issues related to labor relations. We want to be a part of any group or task force that you form to develop an economic development plan for our city. And we look forward to working in partnership with you and the private sector to increase quality jobs in Missoula. We believe quality jobs are jobs that pay a living wage, that provide reasonable access to affordable benefits, including health insurance, and that offer workplace democracy and respect for the right to organize. Thank you.
My name's Jay Reardon, and I'm not a resident of Missoula. I'm a resident of East Helena, Montana. But I'm here today on behalf of the Montana Community Labor Alliance, which is a member organization of Missoula Coalition for a Living Wage. And first of all, I'd like to say that I commend the committee and the Missoula City Commission, because once again, Missoula is at the forefront of progressive action in the state of Montana, and you should be commended for that. I've just got a chance in the last 15 minutes to look at your proposal here, and it appears to me that you've done a tremendous amount of work and had a lot of input from a lot of people in developing this proposal. What I want to specifically talk about is a living wage, and I think the importance that we have a living wage and why it should come forward here in Missoula and hopefully be carried on in the rest of the state. We're not here to say that there's bad employers or there's good employers. I think the goal of the living wage is if a business is going to come to the taxpayers and ask for taxpayers' dollars and a commitment, then they have to meet some criteria. And that's all we're saying. And that criteria, I think you've laid out real well in this resolution. And the living wage, if we're going to make this state a better place to live and better economically and take care of people in this state, get people off of welfare, get people out of poverty, we need to start paying living wages. And it can be done. It's responsibility, I think, of the community, and I think the support that this resolution has had. I attended a meeting, I believe, 4 months ago at the city council meeting, and the support there was tremendous, and the support is continuing to build. And people in Missoula will support this. People in Missoula in the business community, I think, will support paying a living wage. And I would strongly encourage you to maybe put that at the forefront of your economic development in the city of Missoula. Thank you for your time.
I'm Kimberly Eisentrager. I'm on the Missoula District Board for Montana People's Action. We're a statewide grassroots organization fighting for the rights of low and moderate income Montanans. We're a founding member of the Living Wage Coalition, which presently consists of the Missoula New Party, the Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees Union, the Missoula Indian Center, the Montana Community Labor Alliance, the Carpenters Union, Missoula Business and Professional Women, Women's Opportunity and Resource Development, the Montana Federation of Teachers, Women's Voices for the Earth, Advocates for Social Justice, the Montana Association of Churches and Christian Advocate Network, the Missoula County Democrats, the Jeanette Rankin Peace Resource Center, Free Bikes Missoula, and of course Montana People's Action. MPA represents 5,000 people statewide, and more than half of those are Missoula citizens, your constituents. I'd like everyone from Montana People's Action in the room who's not already standing to stand up, please.
Actually, or you can raise your hand
I'd like everyone who's from the Living Wage Coalition to stand also.
Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Some people have to stand, but I know it.
If you've had any doubts about the importance of your work to this community, I think you can see by the attendance here tonight just how many people care about the work you're doing. And we'd really like to express our appreciation for your taking a leadership role in creating a healthy economy in the community and real, sustainable, equitable economic development that's not just about pretty balance sheets, not just about creating any jobs, but about families being able to live in Missoula in a national climate where Montana not only has 51% of its citizens living in poverty, but where that rate is growing faster than in any state in the country. We'd especially like to support your recommendation for a living wage ordinance or resolution, which recognizes these principles, that we need not just jobs, but we need good jobs. We already have more people than in any other state holding more than one job because they're not earning a living wage. We want to attract not just business, but responsible businesses, those that really could be defined as good businesses. And we'd like to encourage you not only to include that recommendation for a resolution or an ordinance, but to make it your first priority. A living wage ordinance, including the elements that you've listed that are also part of Living Wage Coalition's living wage principles. That businesses which receive city support pay a living wage as defined in the resolution or the ordinance. Accountability, that businesses follow through on their promises, and if they don't, that there are means to retrieve the support we've given them. A clean record with the NLRB, and all working towards the goal of reducing poverty in our community.
My name is Craig Sweet. I'm a small business owner here in Missoula. And I want to speak about the broader range of this whole economic development. I truly feel there is a role for the city council to play, and I think the economic subcommittee is really starting to define what that role is within the community in terms of bringing together the forces and the markets and the people who make economic development happen in our community. I do think, though, you have to have some guidelines, and one of those, a key one that you mentioned, is reduction of poverty. to me, that is one of the most important things as a governing body that you can do in all your deliberations is to look how will this reduce poverty, because you know we can have a very nice community. We can do a lot to plan for our community and the orderly growth of our community, but if people cannot afford to live in our community, if they cannot get themselves out of poverty through getting a decent job or getting the training through the Vogue tax to get out of poverty, they're going to be mired in poverty and they're going to leave our town and our community. And a lot of our diversity of our community will go with them. I feel in many ways as a business owner that it's a privilege to be able to do business in a community like Missoula. We have wonderful parks, we have good schools, we've done a lot to improve our air quality in this community. We're doing a lot to manage growth, to reduce congestion on our streets. So in other words, to make this community a better place for me to live, for my employees to live, and for me to do business. And I feel that it's a privilege to be able to do that. Not all communities would have a government that cares that much about their community and do that much in their community and realize and understand that by doing that, they're improving the business climate of their community. So, you know, you have to do many, many things. You have to be looking at those issues of growth management, as well as housing, as well as the issue of improving our environment. And all those things are outlined in the growth management themes documents. I think those, again, that's another thing. I think if you maintain your focus on the themes document, what the themes document outlines for the community and for the future of the community, then I think economic development will happen in a good way that will benefit people in our community. I want to give a plug for a living wage. I think that's real important. I spent a lot of time this summer landscaping homes of people who make quite a bit more than a living wage, and they live in some very nice parts of our community, but I can tell you that a lot of those people are barely living from paycheck to paycheck, despite the fact that they live in a $150,000, $175,000 home. If a factory closes, if the economy slows down, a lot of these people are going to lose their homes. And these are not the poorest of our members of our community. These are what we would call middle class, and even upper middle class people in our community. That's how shaky, I think, how fragile our economy is. You can just imagine what it's like for the people on the very bottom rung of that ladder, the people who work for $6 and $6.50 an hour. So don't go out there thinking, let's create some $6 and $6.50 an hour jobs. Go out there and create good jobs that pay good wages. And if anyone tells you a $6.50 an hour job is a good wage, you know, they haven't tried to live on it for very long and raise their family on it. Don't throw the money away. If you decide to give money away, willy-nilly. You know, I think we saw what happened when the county gave money to a developer to bring in Eagle Hardware, and Eagle Hardware tried to bend the city government over for concessions, and on top of that, they were getting $50,000 from the county. Well, you know, I don't want to see my taxpayer money going to get a favorable zoning, you know, some kind of favorable zoning decision for a business. I'd rather see you put it into something substantial once the company is up and running in order to, if you're going to give money in any way in terms of financial assistance, to help them in terms of training employees or to expand to provide better jobs at even higher pay, rather than just try to give somebody some favorable decisions so they will come here, especially if they're going to offer you jobs that are below poverty level. I think with the work of the task force that they've done so far is very, very good. And I think you're on the right track, and I hope you continue down that track and keep the themes document in mind.
Jim McGrath has been a big sponsor of the economic development city council proposal, and he's a good supporter of the Living Wage Coalition. You might want to talk with Jim McGrath. You can call any council member. It's good to talk to your own,
Yes.
but you could call any council member. If you're not sure which ward you live in, call Montana People's Action. They're here in Missoula at 728-5297.
Right. And the question that I had was, is there something coming up the Tuesday after this will be aired in the city council meeting, or the Monday after?
Well, we had all I have for the upcoming dates right now is that on the 20th
Of
at
this
3
month?
p.m., right?
Of January?
Is the Administration and Finance Committee meeting for the Missoula City
Yeah.
Council.
Not February.
Yeah, I was wrong. It's not February.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
we want to make sure everybody understands
Let's
it's
go back.
January 20th.
January 20th. That's why we're
20th.
doing this
January
program right now, because we want you to get.
That's right.
We want you
We
to
wanna
get
make
on your
sure.
Don't have
phone.
much time.
Yeah.
And we really want you, in any case, to call for or against. Let
Yeah.
us know how we're doing,
Right.
okay?
And it's really
So-
important, you know, because I'm sure each and every one of these city councilors and mayor, you know, living wage, I think, is important to all of us, you know, and the more people that speak up about this issue, especially because, you know, a lot of money is given to corporate entities to, you know, locate and do business here. And, you know, we want to make sure that the business that they do is the kind of business that we'd all like to see here. And living wage is a really important part of that for the employees of those businesses.
The job gap study that Philomena was quoting here a while ago is not the final amount that we need here to live in Missoula. The job gap study was done for the Pacific Northwest. If we get something passed in City Council chamber where we get a living wage ordinance started for the city of Missoula, we will have to ask the council to set what a good economic citizen is, to set what prices are. I mean, so maybe you thought some of those hourly wages were high, because none of us are making those hourly wages.
Yeah.
We all know that. So we go, oh, this is way too high. It's not way too high, but I mean, the business people go, this is way too high. But we need to start somewhere. We don't want a minimum wage. We want a
Right.
living wage.
Right. And that's the reason that most people are working 2 jobs, is because they can't make a living wage working one at minimum wage.
Right. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Yes, thanks,
Thanks for watching.
thanks. And
And-
call your city councilors.
Call your
Call
city
your city
council.
council member. They
Yes.
need to hear from
And
you.
keep watching.
Go to the meeting on January 20th. Remember the new party, we're all here, and I want to give thanks to Virginia and Paula and Philomena, and our camera people, Bonnie and Wendy and Billy back there in the back room, and giving us the direction that we need, and Nan, who's helping out back there on the titler, and anyone else who's been here slaving away at the controls, helping us put together these programs to bring you good programming here in Missoula.
This is the other thing, too. You have to remember MCAT. You have to remember that this is our television station. We've heard some complaints about maybe some of the programming is way too out for people. If you want to come down to MCAT, come on down. This is your television
It
station.
is,
So,
yes.
okay.
And we're here,
Okay.
and we're people.
I think that's enough for tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
everybody, and welcome. I'm Rick Gold from Montanans Against Nuclear Annihilation, a whole new place for me to be. Anyway, we're going to be showing you some videos about actions that are going on. There's a big action in May 7th to 10th called Mothers Against Nuclear Testing. It's at our nuclear test site. That's America's nuclear test site. And America's nuclear test site is 65 miles north of Las Vegas in Nevada. It's about 200 square miles, and many, many, many nuclear bombs have been blown up there. Over 1,000, I guess Greenpeace estimates now. Today with me, I have Philomena Ryan. She's going to talk about the indigenous issues and how that developed with our government using Shoshone land there in Nevada.
And I'm actually going to be speaking about indigenous genocide with the Dene, the Navajo, and the traditional Navajo, and the Hopis. And we're talking about Koyaanisqatsi, a world out of balance, and we're definitely out of balance. We knew that. One half of the world's uranium is on Indian land. 1/3 of the world's strippable coal is on Indian land, and much of this is under Hopi Dene land in Arizona. The world's largest strip mine is 103 square miles, and they want to extend into Dene homeland. 1950s, exploitation of Four Corners area, abundant uranium resources, has engendered epidemic rates of lung cancer among the Dene miners and their families. The mines have operated ignoring all laws of regulation, and surface and groundwater has been contaminated. And to save money, shipping coal, 275-mile illegal coal slurry pipeline pumps over 1.4 billion gallons of scarce, pristine drinking water from a sole source aquifer each year. To use coal from this area, the largest power plant in the United States was built. The air pollution created by that power plant is the greatest single point source of the greenhouse effect gases in North America, and is one of the 2 visible man-made effects seen by Apollo astronauts. All right, and the new lands in Arizona where the Dene resistors and the people that have signed the accommodation agreement have moved to is the prime site for, once again, the prime site for Dene relocatees was purchased by the U.S. government in 1980, and in 1979 the new lands was contaminated by the nation's largest radioactive spill, second only to Chernobyl, and Karamagi left its, I believe, 1.5 million tons of contaminated debris, and that's going to be toxic for 80,000 years. It's 80,000 years of contamination.
Wow.
And I guess we'll be showing a clip of some history of the Dene resistance very shortly, but I'd like to give you a Big Mountain eviction update. Dene's struggle against forced relocation in the 24th year. In 1998, ownership of Peabody Coal Company was transferred to Lehman Brothers Merchant Banking in St. Louis. The United Nations Working Group of Indigenous Human Rights made 2 trips to the area to investigate abuses by the U.S. government. The traditional Dene, or Navajo, enter what may be the last year of their long struggle against the genocidal policies of that U.S. government, of our U.S. government. We have 5 individuals that have received eviction notices. That was on January the 25th, 90-day eviction notices. And at this point, there are 5 elders, grandmothers, traditional elders, that have no intentions of moving whatsoever. And the United States government there are helicopter flights and maneuvers on right above their hogans. And they believe that, the U.S. government believes that the Dene resistors are a national security problem. Now, maybe we'd like to go to our film clip.
But we could also probably talk just a little bit more before we go into our film clip about the fact that in the 50s, this was the beginning of the nuclear cycle. This was where it all began. The nuclear cycle began at Big Mountain, where they actually mined the uranium. And today, all of those affects, you know, all of this indigenous land, both the Shoshone land. They have treaty land of the Ruby Valley Treaty of 1863. You know, the government claims like that somehow they have abrogated their rights, but the Shoshone and the Navajo and all of the people still maintain that this is their traditional holy, you know, spiritual land, and that this whole nuclear cycle is, you know, corrupting and ruining this for them. And I guess we'll go to the show now and take a look at that.
Long the situation is going on, or what the history behind it really entails. But it's what I find interesting is how history sort of tends to repeat itself. The Navajo were removed from their traditional land basically under a government campaign that was spearheaded by Kit Carson to scorch and burn campaign to kill the Dene sheep, to burn them out of their homes, to force them into submission. And that was in around the 1880s, I believe, and they were marched up to Bosque Redondo around Fort Sumner, and were interred, kept prisoners there, basically, for about 3 years. What's interesting is they were released because in 1868, the United States was involved in its Civil War, and they had brought the Southern Confederacy to court for treatment of the United States Army's prisoners, the way they were being treated at Fort Anderson. And basically, they were fearful that people would see that they were doing the same thing to the Navajo, so they released the Navajo, and the Navajo returned back to their lands and back to sheep herding, and spread out and eventually encompassed the Hopi. And the Navajo reservation was actually put in place before the Hopi reservation, and the Hopi reservation was created as a way to get to mineral resources, and that was one of the whole thrusts underlying the creation of the Hopi reservation. And as far as the tribal council for the Hopi, one of the things that was instrumental in the 1930s was John Collier's Indian Reorganization Act, where he went in to create a council government, and that became a puppet government for the government so that they could sign off tracts of land or resources. So it became a tool that the government could use, and it became a key thing in this struggle. The people were hand-picked, and at that time, the people that were hand-picked for the Hopi government were people that were educated off the reservation, that were educated in boarding schools or mission schools, and at that time the primary school was a Mormon school. And one of the families that came out on top as far as political control of the tribal council was the Sakakwaptawa family. And they have been in control since the 1930s and have been really fanning the fires of this, because it has brought political and economic gain to that family, which is quite large.
Oh, okay, so it's going on much longer than 20 years.
Yeah,
very,
there's a
definitely.
long history in there, and what happened was the government created, they put this thing in place around the 1880s called the Grazing Area 6 by executive order, and that was to allow the Navajo to graze a certain area. But that also became politically instrumental when Boyden entered the picture in, I think the 1960s is when Boyden entered the picture. And he pushed a bill through basically to divide that area in half between the Hopi and the Navajo. And this whole thing of stock reduction really was a bill that he introduced, where he said that the Navajo cannot graze more than 50% of the land's carrying capacity, regardless of the fact that the Hopi didn't graze any sheep. And that began the stock reduction. And they used that to justify killing off sheep. What's also interesting is that when the Navajo were released back in the 1880s from Fort Sumner, there was a formula that the government had put in place that basically reflected how many sheep was necessary per family for subsistence, and the stock reduction markedly went below that. So the government knew that they were forcing Navajo people to standards, their own standards, that represented starvation.
And that's still continuing today.
And it's still continuing today, yes.
It's a very serious thing that's happening right now. I know the support groups that are near the reservation at this point, they're dealing, a very serious concern is the eviction notices that have been served as of the 25th, I believe, the 25th of January. But the stock reductions are taking precedence over dealing with the very serious eviction notices, because that's their livelihood at this point. People are really starving.
Yeah, I don't think the public at large really is unaware of what's going on. I know even at the government level, D.C., they've basically been snowballed into believing things exist that really are untrue, unfounded. And again, Boyden was very instrumental in that. When it was realized that there were some 6 million tons of sulfur underlying this area, the joint use area, where primarily the Hopi were using, Boyden, who at that time had some connection with Peabody Coal Company, which it's significant that Boyden is a Mormon lawyer, and Peabody Coal was a company that's controlled by the Mormon Church, and so they saw an opportunity for some real incredible capital gain. He basically hired himself on as the Hopi attorney to negotiate with Boyden, which he also was the attorney for Boyden. And one of the things he did was he hired a company out of Salt Lake, which was also Mormon, David Evans and Associates, which was an advertising firm, to go in and create a media campaign to make the Hopi people look really good, and the Navajo look really bad, and they were the ones that really began this whole range war concept, where nothing really existed prior to that. And they would send camera crews out and take photographs of abandoned cars and abandoned buildings that youth had used just as target practice, and would just every Sunday these pictures would be in newspapers showing this range war that was going on. And prior to that, the government was basically kind of coasting along, not really knowing what was going on out there. But another thing that Boyden did that was pretty significant was he enlisted the aid, per se, of or at least an alliance with Morris Udall, who is also Mormon. And a lot of people aren't aware that Morris Udall is Mormon. And between Boyden, Morris Udall, and this other individual, Steiger, they basically began to snowball a lot of people and push this thing through because they all had stuff to gain from it.
Stephen, can you help me out with some of the names here?
Oh, great, we're back. Isn't that wonderful? Well, we did a switcheroo while we were off, and now I have the pleasure of talking with Butch Turk, a longtime friend. We met at the test site, actually, and how long was it that you've been going to Nevada?
I first started going there in 1991, just a few weeks before the Gulf War began.
Wow. And what brought you to go to the nuclear test site?
Well, any number of things. I guess primarily I'm a nurse, and that means I care not just about the patients I treat, but also about the community at large, the world at large, and the degree to which we're poisoning it with nuclear materials. And a main focus of that has been the Nevada test site. As you mentioned earlier, there have been over 1,000 nuclear explosions occur there. That Shoshone land makes the Shoshone Nation the most bombed nation on earth. Worse than Japan, worse than Kosovo, worse than Germany during World War II. And I think it's real important that for people to understand that even though in 1992 we stopped exploding nuclear bombs there, we're actually still testing nuclear weapons there. The United States has signed a comprehensive test ban treaty, but ignoring the spirit of the treaty, they're still testing nuclear weapons there, although not causing actual nuclear explosions. They're taking the explosion right up to the point of going nuclear. And for this reason, a nuclear arms race that should have stopped with the comprehensive test ban treaty is still going on. So I've been going down to the test site for 7, 8 years now, and it's something I wish more of Missoula's viewers would do. It's literally been a training ground for nonviolent civil disobedience in the country for the past 20 years. And maybe we can look at some of the pictures that we brought along up here.
Yeah.
If you look, you can just glance around them. Different sites from, or visions from the Nevada test site of the resistance, of the artwork that has occurred down there, of the native people, Shoshone people who have led many, if not all, of the demonstrations down there. Religious community has been very strong in opposing the continued testing of nuclear weapons. During the mid-'80s, there was a lot of concern over the medium-range missiles, and there were demonstrations focused around that. And if we can glance at the center of our board here,
Yeah, what is
it's
that
just an
map?
example of the nuclear radiation hazards in the United States. And we often think of nuclear power plants being far away, or even the test site being 1,000 miles away from Montana. But as you see, the whole nation has been nuclearized between production facilities, nuclear power plants, weapons facilities, dump sites, and it's in fact increasing. We are still producing more and more nuclear materials every year and having more and more trouble figuring out what we're going to do about it. I believe later we'll be talking about
Yucca Mountain?
Yucca Mountain, the nuclear waste dump going in next to the Nevada test site. Many of our viewers might recall that during the heyday of nuclear weapons testing in Nevada, in fact, Montana was quite heavily dosed by radioactive fallout, and the government has still not chosen to do the studies necessary to find out what the impact of that was on Montanans and other citizens of this country.
Wow. So I also have 3 other videos which we couldn't actually get up on the board.
Or photographs.
Or photographs. So if you want to sort of see them, I'll just give you a quick look at them. This is pretty interesting. This is a group of folks that I went with down in 1988 to go down to the test site, and this is a really powerful image of the religious aspects of it. A couple of things that I also wanted to talk about was not only are we still producing all sorts of different nuclear materials, but we are also, the GAO just released a report that says now we have spent something like $5.8 trillion on the nuclear arms race. That's, you know, a recent report that has just come out that we learned about. So, you know, there are a number of different compelling reasons that people should think about going to these actions May 7th through 10th. They're called Mother's Day actions at the nuclear test site. It's also a training ground, I believe, for how we relate to and our perspective of the Shoshone and different indigenous peoples who come to these actions every year. So if we can show the video, we have a video of Corbin Harney. He's the spiritual leader of the Western Shoshone, and this will give you an idea of the Shoshone issue and their idea of the whole nuclear testing program.
As I see it all around me, the trees are dying out, our water is contaminated, and our air is not good to breathe. Those are the reasons why today I'm trying my best to come back to our ways for thousands of years ago.
Next, Shoshone medicine man Corbin Harney prescribes ancient remedies for modern ills.
Funding for this program has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting through a grant from the Pacific Mountain Network Program Fund and by the Friends of Idaho Public Television.
We have to come back to the native way of life. Native way is to pray for everything. Our Mother Earth is very important. We can't just misuse it and think it's going to continue. We only got one water, one air, one Mother Earth.
In the deserts of Nevada, an ancient ritual takes place, an expression of the Shoshone people's commitment to the Mother Earth. In a nearly forgotten tongue, Shoshone spiritual leader Corbin Harney prays to the spirit world.
All our food, all the living things here had to be prayed to because they're life like we are.
Corbin is one of our strong spiritual leaders. He's very important to the Indians in this area and other areas because of his strong spiritual value.
He's the one that does all the praying. He works, prays to the Creator for everything that's put here on earth and prays for us, prays with us, asks us to pray, asks us to give an offering. See, our belief that whenever you take something away from Mother Earth, you put something back. He's also one of our doctors. He's able to heal us of different ailments.
Everything's got a life to it. Those are the things that we talk to as an Indian people. The spirits out there, there's spirits out here all the way around us. Those are the things that we've been told to take care of. We've been told to take care of what you got so you can leave something for the younger generation. We try to practice that from the beginning of our life, but we forgot our way. Those are the reason today our land is drying up. I never have spoken out until lately here, the Spirit coming to me and tell me, well, you're going to have to give us a hand here. It wasn't a vision. Water said to me, I'm going to look like water. Pretty soon there, nobody's going to use me. Now I see the water has been polluted by something else. Pretty quick, we're not going to be able to use it. Some places we're already experiencing that. The water looks sad to me. I need help. That's what the water is saying. As I see it all around me, our water is contaminated. The trees are dying out, and our air is not good to breathe. Those are the reasons why today I'm trying my best to come back to our ways of thousands of years ago. The Indian people are going to have to know those things, because all the people that I talk to tells me, you are the people that's going to have to lead us out of this darkness that we're in. We're going to have to start cleaning up the mist that we're putting on this earth. One way we're doing it today is right here in the sweat. We use it for healing. Not only the human race, but everything out there. It's very important for us to learn the native way of what we used to heal ourselves at one time. We didn't have no pills. We didn't have no needles. We rely on what was out here. And that's how we heal for thousands of years. Sweat clears your body. It clears your mind. You pray for each other. When we take any rocks or anything off the Mother Earth, we had to talk to it. I had to tell them the reason why we're bringing them over here. This is where we get together with all the spirits out there. The government came along and said, well, you guys are doing evil thing, so they outlawed it. The spirit comes in to the sweat lodge, like the buffalo spirit, eagle spirit. They come in here in the sweat. Those are the things that I listen to. They telling me what to do. All I am, just their interpreter. Long ago, we had to rely on spiritual power. Panzugumba was the name for this. That's Otter Creek, or Otter Water. This is our spiritual ground for thousands of years. The Indian people have used this. The Shoshone people, as we call them today, they're native of the land. They roam from one end of the country to the other. Same with all the animal life. They go south in the fall. In the spring of the year, they go north. They travel from one end of the country to the other, into Colorado to get their buffalo, and then they travel back into Idaho And then they go in there and get their salmon. They knew the land. They understand the land, where the water is, where a certain kind of food is. This is a medicine canyon. It's a medicine rock, medicine water. And those are the reasons why the people roam through here and they stop here to get doctored. The rock works with a spirit of an eagle. Medicine people put you up there, and then it takes the spirit to take over, to heal you from your sickness. When you come off of that eagle rock, they put you down here in this water. Sometimes the spirit will tell you to dip yourself in here early in the morning before sunrise. Then when you go away from here, you're feeling good. You leave your sickness here. Those are the reasons why our people have always came into this part of the country here to heal their sick. And also this is where most of our people have been buried, most of the native people from this area. Spiritual people know this country is very strong for healing power. There's a buffalo spirit in here. There's a bear spirit in here. There's two humans watches the water. That's what the old people used to say. That's what the Indian people have prayed to and kept their spirit alive for thousands of years. So they make some with make sound here in the woods. So they make no in the hagan in the hang. Now washing the man avoid. No man be it is I and do it. No man be it the hand, no in the house and go plant hand. I'm hoping to keep the spirit life alive here, to keep it in so they can continue to heal our people. The Banzagumba Canyon here is very important to the Shoshone people. Eunice, she's at 100 right now. She's been doing her healing people for ever since she was very small. Her mother got her power from right here and passed it on to her. And she's really proud of this canyon. She always talks about this because her mother is buried here somewhere. There's a threat to this canyon here because of the white man wants to build a dam over our burial sites.
And then my mother's mother and her grandma, they buried her on that side. And then the white people want to dig out them. Why? That's what I said to why they gonna do like that.
They shouldn't be doing this to our ancestors because they were here to rest. This is their resting area. It should never be disturbed. It's very important to the Indian people, this canyon here, Spadzuba Canyon, because our burial site here, this is our spiritual ground for thousands of years. This is where we, the people, put our spirit, our power, our prayers. If we all pray alike throughout the world, we would have a beautiful world, we will have peace. But we don't have peace because the evil's always overtaken the good.
4, 3, 2, 1. 0 time.
What is it doing within our Mother Earth? When that power explodes down here, thousands of feet down, what is it doing to our water table down below? When the spring comes out on the mountain, what does it do? Some of this day, those springs are not going to be pure anymore because the water already told me that. I'm going to look like water and nobody's going to use me.
All righty. We'll get you to full amount. Yeah, this permit here is to allow you guys to come onto the land with us and just show the government that they don't have a right here. According to the Treaty of 1863, this land was all ours. The people out there that's doing all this damage, they don't have a permit from us. They never had permission. And we feel that it's the wrong thing what they're doing out there.
3, 2.
It doesn't go according to our beliefs and our religion.
I'm glad all your people are here. My concern as a spiritual leader for the Shoshone Nation, we got a treaty right here. The government made those promises. This land belongs to the Western Shoshones. Seemed to me they wanted to destroy this Mother Earth. All the living things on this Mother Earth is alive, like we are. The stones are alive. Everything's alive here. But the nuclear testing is killing the spirit within the Mother Earth. Let's put a stop to nuclear testing throughout the world. So that way we have cleaner life and cleaner air, cleaner water.
Okay, well, we just finished there with shots of demonstrations at the Nevada test site, demonstrations Rick and I have both participated in. Just adjacent to the Nevada test site is a sacred mountain called Yucca Mountain, still on Shoshone land. And this is now the designated site for all of the nation's nuclear power plant high-level nuclear waste. It's scheduled to open up, I think about the year 2010, 2012.
12 is what I heard, yeah.
And this will not only be a disaster for the people of Nevada and the people surrounding Yucca Mountain with their problems with water tables and fault lines, but also for people across the country as all this high-level waste, which is relatively safe sitting where it is, comes out upon our highways and our rail lines and crosses the country through major metropolitan areas, through farmlands, so forth. We've got a couple of videos on Yucca Mountain. This first one we're going to see is one produced by CNN, and so it'll give you a little bit of background on the issues involved at the Yucca Mountain waste site. And if we're ready, we'll switch to that video.
Yep.
Well, I guess we're not quite ready yet.
No, but there it is.
And here we go.
The following is a presentation of CNN Business News.
Good evening. Most of humanity's problems are, in the scope of history, fleeting. We can, with goodwill and hard work, see their end 2, perhaps 3 generations down the road. That is not the case, however, with nuclear waste. The pile of poisonous garbage from our power and weapons reactors will be with us tens of thousands of years, threatening all life. The American nuclear industry's nearly 300,000 workers generate thousands of tons of nuclear waste every year. But science has yet to learn how to dispose of this intensely radioactive rubble without fear. In tonight's special report, The Threat of Nuclear Waste, Senior Business News correspondent Steve Young has the report.
This desolate corner of the Nevada test range, 110 miles northwest of Las Vegas, could become the final resting place for the nation's most dangerous nuclear waste. The government wants to build a permanent repository at Yucca Mountain, a nuclear graveyard not far from the atomic bomb's cradle. This is Nuclear Dawn, July 16, 1945, about 50 miles from Alamogordo, New Mexico. The weapon was called Trinity. The test was triggered at 5:29 a.m. and 45 seconds Mountain War time. The tower was vaporized by the world's first atomic bomb. This is all that remains from that historic blast nearly 46 years ago. Then the nation was united against a common foe. Now it is split by fear of the weapons and nuclear power industry's legacy, the lethal and increasing amount of radioactive waste.
Well, I guess I can take off those iron ones, can I?
Nuclear fuel is millions of times more radioactive when it comes out of a power reactor than when it goes in. It's called high-level nuclear waste. In addition to generating electricity, nuclear fuel is used in defense reactors to make plutonium for weapons plants. Just 1/35 billionth of an ounce of plutonium causes fatal cancer if it gets inside your lungs. There'll be 100,000 tons of high-level nuclear waste or more by the turn of the century. The hazard isn't weight or volume, but the sizzling radioactivity. From the earliest days, most experts said the safest place to put nuclear waste was deep within the earth.
I've often asked myself that question. Why did we not proceed with the waste disposal program at the same vigor that we did building nuclear power plants?
But the path to a permanent nuclear repository has been littered with technical problems.
Now, the proponents of nuclear power keep saying the disposal of waste is a political problem, it's not a technical problem. They've said that so much that it's become almost like a mantra.
Another big obstacle is a flood tide of distrust caused by past nuclear problems and government cover-ups. At the government's Hanford, Washington weapons facility, workers dumped at least 120 million gallons of liquid nuclear waste on the ground for 20 years until 1966. Some people don't believe it when the government says a nuclear dump can be safe because of the government's long history of downplaying nuclear dangers.
If the atomic bomb explodes, duck and cover. That's the first thing to do.
There have been this unfortunate tendency to cover up damaging information that people need to know, number one, if they're going to protect their own health and safety, and number two, if they're going to have any confidence in the agency that runs this program.
But even if the Energy Department can overcome the psychological and scientific problems, a repository at Yucca Mountain would be ready no sooner than 2010. And it would be too small for all the waste then waiting for a decent burial. The Department of Energy tried in vain in the 1980s to find 2 towns from a list of 20 willing to let the government build nuclear waste burial vaults, one in the east and one in the west. But everywhere, the DOE was greeted like the Grim Reaper.
DOE, you are invited to come back to bury your waste in Minnesota, but you will have the damnedest fight you ever had in your life. Am I right?
Faced with the firestorm, the DOE shortened its list of nearly 24 sites to just 3: Hanford, Washington, Deaf Smith County, Texas, and Yucca Mountain, Nevada. Finally, in 1987, a House-Senate conference committee reached a nuclear waste compromise.
Some of the congressmen at this conference committee said, look, we all know what we want. We want to stick it in Nevada, keep it away from Texas, keep it away from Washington State.
Energy Department officials hope 70,000 tons of the most lethal atomic leftovers can be safely stored deep within the mountain for 10,000 years. Putting that in perspective, 10,000 years ago, man was just learning to use stone tools. Many scientists think within the next 10,000 years, there'll be an ice age. Sticking the pin in Nevada must have looked like a sure political bet. The state has just 4 electoral votes. But the powers in the capital, Carson City, have been fighting back in court to block Washington at every turn, calling the Yucca Mountain site perilous, refusing to issue environmental permits. Now Congress is trying to eliminate Nevada's right to derail the decision to evaluate Yucca Mountain for use as the nation's nuclear waste dump. The Secretary of Energy says the state is conducting a scorched earth policy. Nevada shrugs off the attack.
If the Congress would rethink this process and go back to the pre-Screw Nevada 1987 legislation and set up a process that appears on its face to be fair and equitable, certainly we would rethink our position.
Well, it's not a case of seal it up and hope that in fact you had it right, but there's a really significant period of time of continued verification or testing as to whether or not the decision was valid.
But that's not what happened at a now closed nuclear fuel recycling plant at West Valley, New York. Deadly fuel rods were buried less than 60 feet down. 22 years later, they're still there. Finding a permanent site for high-level waste is so controversial, a new job has been created to tackle the task of dealing with states, territories, even Indian tribes. Chief U.S. Nuclear Waste Negotiator.
I'm hopeful that we'll find a governor not that says yes, but a governor that says maybe, a governor who says, yes, I will permit a dialogue in my state, which will lead us to a yes or no decision. But remember, this is purely voluntary. There's no penalty for opting out. They can opt out at any time.
Leroy has yet to start formal negotiations. Serious nuclear waste talks begin next October. Soon after, the waste negotiator could be coming to your state. When the Energy Department began working at WIPP, the Waste Isolation Project in New Mexico, Gerald Ford was president. WIPP was scheduled to open under President Reagan. Well into George Bush's presidency, they still haven't cut the ribbon because technical problems keep cropping up. WIPP is supposed to warehouse dangerous Defense Department nuclear waste, mainly plutonium-contaminated gloves, tools, and protective clothing. But scientific controversies have prolonged the site studies here and at Yucca Mountain, Nevada, which might take the most radioactive waste. We're on our way 2,100 feet underground to a series of vast rooms made by mining salt in a remote region of New Mexico near Carlsbad. The government hopes to store some of its nuclear waste here, hopes to but isn't sure because after spending between $700 million and $1 billion, questions are still being asked about whether the site is suitable. A salt vein was chosen for the WIPP site because salt occurs in geologically stable areas. But critics fear minute amounts of water in the salt could reach the waste and carry it into the environment. Defense nuclear waste would come here in $300,000 casks.
It's literally a vault within a vault surrounded by 10 inches of styrofoam and then an outer stainless steel skin.
To collect the waste from around the nation and bring it here will require 25,000 separate truckloads. Environmentalists fear transportation disasters on the country's aging roads. The Energy Department says its tests prove the casks would survive any accident imaginable. But the first to respond would be local fire, police units, and emergency teams, and there are fears they wouldn't know how to handle nuclear waste. The radioactive garbage presently earmarked for Yucca Mountain is even more dangerous than what would go to the WIPP plant in New Mexico. Transporting the waste fuel rods from power reactors and weapons plants to Yucca Mountain would require 1,300 shipments a year for 2 decades or more. But the Energy Department says, on balance, it likes the location because it would minimize storage concerns.
It's one of the driest areas in the country. 2, it's very remote. 3, we think we found a block of rock that's been relatively stable for the last 2 million years. Therefore, we predict it can be stable for the next 10,000 years.
Moreover, at Yucca Mountain, the water table is very deep and the waste would be stored high above it, lessening chances water could carry radioactive material into the environment. But some scientists and Nevada state officials have deep misgivings. Misgiving number 1, from atop Yucca Mountain, 7 extinct volcanoes dot the landscape. Misgiving number 2, a wild card in an exploration trench, disputed evidence that the water table once may have been much higher.
Well, there have been a series of studies on this trench, and the isotope information that's been gathered supports this being deposited by rainwater.
That's the official stand. But if one of the Energy Department's senior Yucca Mountain geologists is right, there could be a catastrophe. The geologist says the exposed stone shows water pushed up from below. That's called upwelling. If it happened once, it could happen again, pushing lethal waste into the outside world. Nevada state officials have other concerns. Yucca Mountain is believed to contain valuable minerals, including oil. Nevada officials say that might tempt future generations to tear the repository apart. The Energy Department already knows a lot from monitoring stations and 300 holes and trenches. But a thorough examination would require many more drill holes, mine shafts, and seismic soundings, and would take at least until the year 2001 to complete. It would cost close to $4 billion. No other site is being investigated. If Yucca Mountain fails that examination 10 years from now, or Nevada officials successfully block the site, the search for a nuclear waste repository would have to start from...
Hey! Now, if that wasn't enough of a look at what is going on with the nuclear waste dump, we're going to look at what some of the local Nevada youth, they did their own show on what this nuclear waste is going to do to their state and the issues around it. So without further ado, let's go into and have a look at what the kids of Nevada had to say about nuclear waste and its storage and the transportation issue.
Has been really active for a long period of time. The most recent activity, at least in this area, are these 3 cones right here that are 1 million years old. But there's even a younger volcano, and when you drive up from Lathrop Wells, it may have erupted only 6,000 years ago. If you consider that the Earth has been in existence for 4.5 billion years, 1 million years is a very, very short period of time. And, for example, a volcano erupting 6,000 years ago, for geologists, that's yesterday. Well, Yucca Mountain's just right over there on the other side of this volcano. And having volcanoes around here means that we may have future eruptions. If the casks are disrupted, then it could distribute nuclear waste into the atmosphere. More likely what will happen is the cask will remain intact, but you'll have casks lying either on the flanks of the volcano or on the lava flows. There are many other places where these dangers are not present. So as a geologist, my own opinion is this is one of the worst places in the western United States to put a repository.
The most likely way that radioactive waste from a repository could reach the human environment is through the groundwater.
The repository at Yucca Mountain would be several hundred feet above the water table.
There's scientific evidence that the water table around Yucca Mountain has changed several times. In the future, if a wetter climate made the water table rise up into the repository, that could also release radioactive waste into the groundwater.
The problem is, you need a place that's totally stable to hold the radioactive material, not some place that's going to do a little shaking or a little boiling.
The DOE is supposed to be studying these site safety issues too. But retired Air Force Brigadier General Joel T. Hall, a contractor working for the DOE, said this about the DOE's approach to studying the site. What is happening here is the development of tailored data files, computer models, and analysis to support and validate the selected conclusion that Yucca Mountain is suitable. There has been no objective evaluation of this mountain. This is an analytical scam. This project is the worst federal program I have ever seen or heard of.
So who is the DOE? And can we believe everything they say? Let's take a look at their track record.
So here's a little instructional video the DOE did back in the 1950s.
Sundays, holidays, vacation time, we must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover. This family knows what to do, just as your own family should. They know that even a thin cloth helps protect them. The bomb might explode when there are no grown-ups near. Paul and Patty know this, but no matter where they go or what they do, they always try to remember what to do if the atom bomb explodes right then. It's a bomb. Duck and cover. Paul and Patty know what to do.
More recently, a committee of the U.S. Senate, the U.S. General Accounting Office, and the investigative arm of Congress has documented radioactive and hazardous waste contamination of soil, groundwater, and air at nuclear facilities managed by the DOE. There were 127 facilities studied. 124 of them showed contamination.
That record is abysmal. Look that word up.
Some other DOE highlights.
You'll remember that early in 1994, there were all these news reports about how the government had been conducting secret experiments on unsuspecting Americans over the years. This was also the DOE.
About 70% of adults in Nevada are against the Yucca Mountain project. So the DOE now spends millions in Nevada schools every year convincing us students that Yucca Mountain is the right site.
So ask, can we believe everything the DOE says?
Let's recap. First, 10,000 years.
Second, Nevada got shafted.
Third, the transportation issues. Fourth, earthquakes and volcanoes.
Fifth, the water and the environment.
And finally, the track record of the DOE.
One last big thing. If the DOE is allowed to build Yucca Mountain, they're going to come here in Nevada, dump their waste, put up some markers, and walk away from the site.
Leaving it without guards, site workers, or anyone to tell future generations of the danger for the next 10,000 years.
Out of sight, out of their mind.
My name is Ian Zabarty. I'm a Western Shoshone Indian. How many have heard of a Shoshone Indian before? Okay, most of you. Well, we've always been taught that the Creator put us in this particular area for a reason, and that reason is to take care of this land. This is where our responsibility lies. I think what's particularly interesting in this situation is that we have a treaty with the United States. This treaty was entered into by the Shoshone and the United States in 1863, prior to the creation of the state of Nevada. This says this is Shoshone country. Does not allow for high-level nuclear waste to be put at Yucca Mountain. And besides being Western Shoshone law, this is also United States law. What I'm doing here is trying to protect future generations' rights. We're borrowing this land, we're mortgaging this land by our activities today from them. And what I want to do is make sure that they have the same opportunities and more than that we have.
So, what does make sense? First, slow down the rush. Even nuclear power plant officials know that waste can be stored where it is generated until it cools. We're only talking 100 years or so.
That would make transport much less risky. And who knows what technology will be invented in the next century. That allows time to discover answers.
And that allows time for the DOE to improve their record and clean up any existing waste sites that are contaminated.
And it gives us time to keep asking questions, to make sure we're getting the whole story.
You have to show both sides and then let the people decide for themselves what is right and what is wrong.
I always think most of the time that, oh, I'm just a teenager, nobody will ever listen to me. But if you have enough people and enough support and a strong enough voice, you can.
Well, I would tell them they should care, because if they decide to live here, it's going to be their future. And if they want to have a safe one, they better do something about it.
I think it's our responsibility as students and as young people to speak up. Write your congressman, get involved, and try to get this thing out of the state of Nevada, because it's not for Nevada.
I would ask that they pay attention and don't just forget about it. Make sure that they educate themselves and they know what's going on in the place where they live and places where other people live. Just don't ignore it. because it's not going to go away.
So you've heard the questions. Make sure you ask them.
Speak up. Shout if you have to.
Just don't let them steamroll over us. Nevada's better than that. We're talking about our future, and our kids, and their kids.
And their kids, and their kids, and their kids.
For 100 centuries.
Think about it.
Then do something.
I want to thank you for watching our program today. If you'd like more information on the issues we've discussed, or might even like to join us at the Nevada Test Site, May 7th through the 10th, you can contact us at the number that's about to appear on our screen.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for
And
being here.
I especially want to thank Philomena and Rick for their efforts in this presentation today, and our wonderful studio crew.
Nan and Robin and MCAT and all the others. We're also going to have a yard sale on May 1st, and that's going to be happening, I guess it's the weekend, May 1st, May 2nd, and so we'll be collecting various stuff, foods, camping gear, a camera, and possibly even a laptop computer to take with us on our little voyage down to the test site. So please give us a call if you can help us, and thanks.